All right. Well, I will start us out. My name is Lindsay, and I'm with A Children's House for the Soul, and we are a community for those with skin conditions.
Yeah.
And we just aim to support kids and their families who are dealing with all kinds of special skin. And so, to that point, one of the things we love to do is share people's stories. And I have with me here my friend Jasmine. Jasmine, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Jasmine. I'm married and I have 3 kids, one of which who has EB. It's called epidermolysis bullosa, so he just blisters super easily. He was also just recently diagnosed with eczema, so they kind of battle each other flare-up wise. But he is the sweetest. He'll be 2 on Wednesday, which is November 11th, and he's just the best kid I ever met in my whole life.
Aw, and you have 2 others?
I do. I have 2 little girls. We call them the M tribe because they're all M's. So I have Malia, she's my oldest, and then Marcella is my little hurricane. And then there's
The middle one always has to be a hurricane, don't
she's
they?
always like, I don't know. A hurricane is better than a tornado. I don't understand it. Like she's just wild. Wild, wild.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here, Jasmine. We connected because I was looking for families with EB experience to help share their stories. So
Right.
um, this is so exciting, and I'm interested to hear about how eczema and EB and how you even were able to kind of tell and ask the right questions with your doctor.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
there's so much we could learn from you. So do you just kind of want to start with sort of walking us through your journey of having
Yeah.
Maddox and finding out about his special skin?
Yeah. So, well, it was like a normal pregnancy for us. We went through everything normal. We went through all the doctor's appointments, and there was nothing that, like, no red flags. So we had no idea that there was anything that was going to come up, after he was born. The day he was born, we went to the hospital, and, he was like 3-hour labor, and we were done. And when he came out, usually doctors are celebrating and they're super excited. Our doctors and nurses were very quiet. And it's because he had 2 little blisters on his face and he didn't have any skin on one of his fingers. And the doctors in there were really confused. They didn't know what it was, what it could be, why he looked the way he did. I was asked a number of questions. Did I have HIV? Did I have any diseases that can kind of lead towards that? And of course I didn't. Me and my husband have been married for years. So, it was just kind of a really surprising thing. And then the pediatrician that was called in, she was like, I think I know what this is, but I want to ask a dermatologist. Is this okay with you? So she took a few pictures and she sent him off. And we kind of knew by that night that he did have EB. And it's just because the way it presented itself. Now with Maddox, he stayed in the NICU for 5 days and he was sent home with us. And it was just the most challenging, nerve-wracking thing ever because, the life that we had envisioned and pictured was essentially like not the same. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know how to go about this. Maddox is the first in both my family and then Josh's family, with Josh as my husband. And we had no idea what he even stood for. Like we couldn't even pronounce the word for, we had no idea. And so it was like just walking through, it was just like walking blind. We didn't know what we were going to expect, what routes we were going to take. And the dermatologist, she's been just amazing. She leads us through everything. I can call her up at any point in time for any questions and she's going to answer them for me. She's just amazing. And Maddox's first 6 weeks were pretty rough on Josh and I, just because we were afraid to hold him. It's so awful having this, the skin thing, and you just don't know if you're going to hurt them when you hug them or, hold them if something's going to happen. It was probably the worst 6 weeks we've ever been through. And then we got his genetic results back. And that right there was just the biggest breath of fresh air, because we finally knew at that point what we were working with and how we could go about it. And we saw adults with the same condition, live full lives. So that was our promise, and he has epidermolysis bullosa simplex. So just a very mild version. He's classified as intermediate, so it's very moderate to mild. He's typically just gets him on his hands and his feet and on his neck because he itches around his neck. And he's just, he's just gotten better, which is great for us. We still do have rough days and rough flare-ups. It's definitely made us better as a family. We've had to tighten a few things down, and we had to buy a house for him and just just become a more stable family for him, because we're going to doctors, we're in and out of doctors. He has therapists that come here every week. He has 2 therapists that come and help us kind of get him going. He is not walking yet, but we're super close. We have such high hopes over the next few weeks that he will be, standing to walking, which is such good news for us. So everything with him is just completely 180 with the girls. Like, we didn't, the medical and having medical packages delivered to our house every month with just numerous supplies, because we don't know what we're going to need. We don't know how we're going to treat it. We don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. And I think that's the most frustrating thing of all, is it's so unpredictable. We just didn't know. And then a few weeks ago, probably, I want to say it was August. So not even a few weeks ago, a few months ago. I noticed little dots on his stomach that were similar to that of a rash, and I was kind of concerned. So we went to just his regular dermatologist checkup, and she's like, that looks like eczema to me. And they were right along where he would flare up on his stomach. And she's like, I think that's what that is. Let's treat this. So not only was he given 1 skin condition, he was given 2. And that is just like how they work together. It's not necessarily anything, but like when they're both flared up at the same time, that's when it's like a problem. And we haven't really noticed anything since that appointment, because we did get like a mild steroid cream to kind of clear it up. And then we've noticed that they're not really fighting each other anymore. We just have this normal, I hate to say the word normal, but to us, it's just like normal days. You wake up and you deal with it. And he's very easy to care for. He's very loving, and he's just so much fun to be around. I love it so much. He's the best kid ever, I swear. So.
I hope I get to meet him sometime. I'm gonna send you guys some invitations.
Yes, do it. We would love to. I would love to like share him around, because he's different from what we thought we were gonna get, for sure. I was asked to explain him today, like his personality, and I'm like, he's just spunky, like he's fun, and he likes to be by himself, but he's loving. Like, he's just a little man. I just love him. He's fun. And he's sleeping right now, which is much needed, because he was a little crazy.
Nap time is so imperative at 2. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Someone would tell my girl that would be nice.
For kiddos and for mama, you need him to take that nap.
Definitely.
So for people who don't know, how do you explain epidermolysis bullosa? Do you get questions? Do you find yourself maybe even probably explaining to family just so they can understand? How do you kind of explain it?
Well, it just kind of depends on who the person is. Like, sometimes we have a very brief explanation. Like, if we're in the store, one time Josh was asked if we had burned him, like on his hand, which is so frustrating, because it's like, no, we wouldn't burn our 1-year-old and bring him in public. Like, there's no, like, we would never do that ever. So, there's been some questions and some stares, and you're just so frustrated, because, it's just a baby. Like, he's just a baby in the end. So our quick version is, he has EB, and he blisters super easily on his skin, and so that's why he looks like this. With family, we try to explain it more, because one thing I've always held really close to my heart is I don't want people to be afraid of him. I don't want people to be afraid of Max, and afraid to love on him, and afraid to hug him, and just afraid to be a part of like who he's becoming. So with them, I go in a little bit more depth. I explain, like, he has the simplex version. He's very mild, so he can do almost anything that any 2-year-old could do. He just can't walk. Like, he has the personality, he has likes, and he has dislikes. I just let them know, you can't pick him up, and you can't spin him in circles. You can wrestle with him, but you just don't want to pull on him at all. And if you notice that he's upset with you, like, it's good to back off, because you don't want to overwhelm him either. Because the more you overwhelm him, the more he starts picking at himself. So, I mean, just the most basic explanation that we give people is that he blisters, and, it's just like sensitive skin. It's like if you rub, you wear shoes for too long and it hurts. For him, it's like the same thing, only it's just a much more mild, like a much more complicated version of that, I guess. He can't wear like jeans like at all because, you know, it roughs up his knees and his legs. So he typically is only in, you know, it's like a bamboo material type clothing. So he's typically only wearing that. You know, the shoes we get him, we have to be really careful with, and, you know, just everything. So it's just like, you just have to take extra care because he does have really sensitive skin. But I want people to know that he is like any other normal 2-year-old his age, as far as like functioning and eating and playing. Like, he wants to do all those things. You know, his skin just might hold him back a little bit, but you're not going to notice much of it, which is such a blessing.
It sounds like a lot of that is his personality and how you, Mama and Daddy, Joshua, how you guys have sort of helped him to grow and made accommodations for him.
Yeah, like we were given a child like with his own world, and it was like, okay, fit him into yours somehow. So we just kind of expanded. And while we do things a little differently, we don't expect others to, like, you know, change their whole lifestyle for us. We'll just adapt to what what's thrown at us. And I always tell people, like, I'm glad he's not my brother. I'm glad he's like my son, because, you know, my mom's a little bit more crazy with him, and Josh's mom's a little bit more like, you know, they just watch him super crazy. For me and Josh, we're like, okay, do what you want to do. If you get hurt, we'll fix it. You know, we're really laid back when it comes to a lot of that stuff.
Oh my goodness, Jasmine, you know, I just read a blog, one of our friends who's older, she's an adult, Rachel is her name. She has EB, and one of the things she said in her blog was thanking her mom for treating her like any other kid. So
right. It's a plus. It amazes me how many parents, I feel like, wrap their kids in a bubble because of like any medical complexity, not just EB. Mm-hmm. This is any form of any medical complexity, because you know, and that's one of the things the therapist said today is like medical families tend to like really baby their medical baby. You know, for us, it's like he gets in trouble with the girls, he fights with them, he gets yelled at, he gets, you know, patted on the hand himself, like, you know, he gets treated the same way we treat our other kids, because it's like, we want him to know, like, life is not going to be, it's not going to be fair no matter how we treat you, because it's always going to be different. So our goal is to just, you know, help him adapt to what he's got going on.
That's awesome. You're so good.
We try so hard. I don't, like, some days it's so frustrating, but other days it's like, we don't even notice there's a blister. You know, we don't know there's even anything different about it, because he just goes on and plays like about his day, like my daughters did. You know, it's just, it's so weird how it works out like that. So
you said something earlier that I would love, and you might have to think about it, but you were talking about being in the store or somewhere and someone having a question about him and his safety and if his skin's okay. And I feel like I talk to a lot of mamas in our community that are facing that, whether it's really severe eczema, maybe on their face, or it's EB, or it's ichthyosis, other skin conditions that are just more apparent, and people just aren't familiar with them. Right. What advice would you give to those mamas who are in this? What kind of advice might you give to those mamas whose kiddos skin causes the questions of strangers?
So my is like, never be afraid to stand up for your baby. Like, never be afraid to stand up for them. Like, for us, it is so important for Max to know that we have his back no matter what. So me, on the other hand, if people look at him, I'll just look back, and, you know, if they say anything, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. You know, don't ever be afraid. Like, don't take offense to it, because a lot of people are just genuinely, like, they're just genuinely curious about it. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They just want to know. You know, people are nosy. That's how it is. Now, hand, if you look or say something rude to or like just say anything, not necessarily rude, but you ask questions to Josh, he kind of takes it a little bit differently. I feel like dads feel like they have to protect their kids, so they're a little bit more quick to jump and snip at people, whereas moms, we just don't want them, you know, to feel like they're out of place. So my only advice is, like, don't be afraid to stick up for your kid. Like, if you feel you have to protect them in public, to let them know, like, it's a huge medical thing. You know, if you have to carry flashcards around, hand them out if somebody's looking. But at the same time, like, don't make your child feel uncomfortable. Like, we would never cover Maddox up because the way he looks, you know, it's not comfortable for him. Like, we want him to know that it's fine to be different. So, you know, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid, like, if people are looking, sometimes they're just wanting to know if he's okay. They don't, you know, they don't need to know anything else other than like, oh, he has a skin condition and that's it. Like, you never have to go into detail about that, you know? So we just let him know, like, we're not ashamed of him at all. So I'll tell you anything you want to know about him, you know? So that's fine with me.
I love that. It's like you're mirroring for him what you want him to feel one day. You're
Right.
already doing it. The confidence to answer a question, to not feel stared at, to feel protected, to have control over how much information he gives.
Exactly. And my son, like, he's already kind of a looker. He has blonde, curly hair, like platinum blonde, and he has bright blue eyes. So he's already like a super handsome kid. So, you know, then people look at his hand or his foot and they're like, oh, what's going on? And I never, like, for me, I used to be more offensive about it, except like, why are you even looking at him? Like, don't look at him. But now it's like, you know, come talk to us. Like, there's a saying for EB, and it's like a huge thing. It's come say hi, because we're the same as everyone else. We're raising the same kid as everyone else. There's just, you know, something that makes them a little different, and different is completely okay. So.
Exactly. He's made a masterpiece just the way he is.
Right. 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Oh man, I love what you said. And can I just tell you, girl, I got to give you props, because there are some mamas in the community whose kiddos were 9, 10, and everyone has to take their own journey, but to where they got where you are now. And so I just want to give you that encouragement. Mama, you're awesome.
I know. And it's so weird, because to me, it doesn't feel any different. And I like explain it to everyone. And I always hate to use the word normal, especially now, because, you know, I have 2 normal daughters and 1, you know, kid who's not normal. And I hate that word. But to us, these are just normal days. Like, we don't do anything different than we would have. You know, it's like, to us, we get up, we change his diaper, we give him a bath. Like, that's it. You know, we do the same things you would do for your kid. Like, it's not anything different for us. Like, this is our normal life. Like, it's not a surprise to us anymore. So.
That's amazing. Actually, that leads me to a question I didn't even know I was going to ask you. So please feel free. But I would love to hear, like, what advice would you give a doctor, or what did your dermatologist or your pediatrician do right from the beginning that made you feel so empowered and feel ready to sort of approach all this?
So we were in the NICU, and it's awful because EB is not very common. It's, you know, 1 in like 20,000 births. It's like 200 kids a year. That's it. Out of every person born in the US, maybe 200 have EB. So it's very rare. And so we were given a list of like bullet points of what you could and couldn't do. And for us, it was like, don't touch him, don't hold him. It was awful, you know? So right away, we're like, we have to make our own standardized plan. Like, we had to take advantage and take charge of his care. So as soon as we were discharged from the NICU, we kind of made our own rules. And his pediatrician, who my daughter's, pediatrician, who has had my oldest daughter since she was 6 weeks old, was called, and they were like, okay, she's bringing you her son and he has this. She didn't know what it was. She Googled it. But the best thing for doctors is to let the parent lead the care. Like, we're going to know our kid way better than anything, any book could have taught you. You know, there's a page in your medical journal that's maybe a chapter long. Like, this is our life, you know. So his pediatrician has always let us lead the way. Like, if she's asking questions, she's like, oh, well, mama knows, you know, ask her. You know, for him, we don't do, we don't do Band-Aids. You can't rub his skin with alcohol before shots, but like, we've kind of created our own way to do it. And then as far as dermatology, she's the exact same way. She doesn't have a standardized care plan for all her EB patients. It's just mom to mom, like what we do best for our kid. So for doctors, like, you have to just lead the way, like, let the mom, like, or let the dad, like, let the parents lead the way, because we're going to ultimately know what's best for our kids, for sure.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that so much. Moms and dads are the experts in their child, for sure. Oh, that's so well said. That's so well said. If you could go back and tell yourself something, or tell a new mama on the first day she finds out about EB, or if you want to be specific, EB simplex, what's something that you would say?
So my biggest regret, and I think I'll always kind of hold this in my heart, is like those first 6 weeks, I felt like we didn't love him enough, like we didn't hold him enough and we didn't like care for it, like, kiss him and cuddle him enough. Like we just didn't. And so like what I would tell someone is never be afraid to do that. Like skin to skin is going to make your baby feel better. It's going to make them feel your warmth. Like, but if you have to, wrap them in a blanket so you can hold them and kiss them and love on them and, put them in bed with you. Like I just felt like we could have given Max a lot more had I known that like it was okay, but I didn't know it was okay, And so that's the one thing I do tell new moms is like, don't be afraid to hug your kid, like at all. Like if they want to come up to you, or if you held your other newborns, or, if this is your first kid, like love them, snuggle with them, like they're not going to break from a hug. They're not. Some of them might get a little roughed up, but I feel like a hug is comforting for both people. And so I always tell people like my biggest regret is not loving him enough when he was born. But now, of course, he's just this, this little boy who loves hugs and he loves sitting with us and stuff. So I wish we would have done that sooner. Is just, not be afraid to kind of get in there and love on him. So
that's great advice. Yeah, you just needed that permission. And so
yeah.
you could have gotten that from somewhere and felt
Yeah.
safe. Yeah.
Right. It was awful. Like up until his genetics appointment, which I called like every day for like a solid week. I'm like, did he get him? And they're like, oh yeah, we got your results in. And then my dermatologist she called me and she was like, oh, he has simplex, but they still want you to go to your meeting. And I feel like after that meeting, that's really when our doors all opened at once. Like this is what you can do. This is where you can go. Like to us, it felt like we were just in this little box. And then when we went and we found out that he was going to be okay, like I think that's when we just started changing everything, making sure he knew that we loved him and, we wanted to hold him and be around him and we weren't afraid of him.
What are you are giving me so many good things. Do you have a little bit more time?
I do, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't want to be greedy with you, but this is amazing.
Yes, no problem.
I was thinking about your older girls.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how old they were when he was born. How did you sort of prepare them for his skin, or what are some things that you have taught them sort of since that you sort of helped you?
So when Max was first born, I had 3 babies under 3. That was it. My kids are all a year apart, which is partly me and my husband's fault. Whatever, no big deal now. So at first, I think my daughters thought that all boys had ouchies on their skin. Because, my husband has scars, obviously. He played sports, and he was kind of rough, when he was younger. So they all have. So I think initially they thought that every little boy they're going to come across has some type of ouchie. So for us, that's kind of like the veil we wrapped it in. We just kind of let her know. My oldest right now is asking me a lot more questions. Like she's 4 now. So she's really getting in depth with her questions. Like, why does Max look like this? How come it's just him? How come like my skin, so just like really hard questions. And for us, we just like the best way is just to be honest, like he's got this and he's going to have it, but he's going to be okay. So she thinks that, I think she's definitely not afraid of him. They have never been afraid of Max. Like they have wanted to hug him and play with him. Like I said, him and my daughter Marcella, which is my middle daughter, they fight all day long. Like they'll fight with each other. They hit each other and they like take toys from each other. Like, so we just let them know, like, you just have to be a little bit careful when you're doing stuff. Like, if you're running, like watch his feet, watch for his hands. Yes, babe. I'll get you water in just 1 second. Okay. Okay. The hurricane. She's in here. Love you. But, so we just let them know, like, you can do exactly what you want to do with, like, what you would do with your other sibling. Just be mindful of his hands and feet, so we let them play. I think the questions definitely get harder when we're older. Like when my daughter grows more and she realizes not all boys have this problem. And so, I mean, the best we can do is we just have her be gentle with everyone, like when she's playing with other people, like, oh, watch out for their hand, it's just, we just let them know that he's a little bit different, but he's still going to be fine. Like you can still play with him and love him and do those things.
So you're just kind of taking it as they come and you're adjusting the questions as they get older. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, there's not really like a rule book for it, like siblings. And that's another thing is like EB siblings, I think they're often kind of swept, like their needs aren't put forth as much. So we do try to let them know, like, they're just as important, but like the questions, sometimes I just can't answer them. You know, with Malia, she's like, why is my skin this way and not, you know, not Max's? And it's hard. Those are hard to be like, I just don't know, you know, like it just happened like that. And so that's hard for a 4-year-old to grasp, but that they're different, but they don't know why, you know. So we'll just take it as it comes. She's getting smarter. She's just gonna keep coming. So we just gotta prepare ourselves for sure.
Yeah.
Questions to Josh and be like, that's a daddy question. I don't know, you know. So that's my thing.
You know what, Jasmine, though? I feel like so many parents are afraid to tell their kids, I don't know, or let's find out together. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's better to let them know now that we don't know everything.
Right. Well, I don't want to make up something and then in 2 years they'd be like, why did you say this 2 years ago? You know, I just don't know why it happened, you know. And then like why, and she doesn't understand the concept of age yet either, because we do have a nephew. He's also 1, and he walks right now, so he, you know, he grew, like, he's pretty up to date with his stuff, so he walks. Like, well, he's not a baby because he walks, you know. Max isn't older than him because Max doesn't. So she doesn't really understand the concept of age. So that's kind of like one of those things where I'm like, well, Max is older, but he doesn't walk just because he's not ready yet, you know. So some things that I know for sure that I can't ask or answer right away, but you know, we're working on it. She's got a million questions. So if you change your mind, like if you just switch it a different way, she's gonna ask a different one. It will be okay.
Exactly. Oh, that's brilliant. That's so true. So I was thinking when you were talking, I was realizing, so again, some of our community is going to be more familiar with EB than others. Can you share with us, is there a special sort of routine in your day for his skin?
So it's obviously different kid to kid because there's different severities and there's different there's different groups of EB. So for us, it's very simple. In the morning is when we do wound care if we have to at all. So what we do is we'll get him up and so we have one day where it's bath day and one day it's just like a normal regular no bath day. So on bath day, we get him up and in his bath, we have to use a little vinegar to help clean out any, you know, infection or just like clean up any bacteria growth on his skin. And he then like just a little bit of vinegar and salt and then like regular bath water and things like that. And that takes about 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'll get him ready. And he has 2 little bandages that go on his hips and then one on his lower back just to protect that diaper from rubbing against his skin. And then we'll just throw the diaper on in regular clothes. So that's our routine. It's the same pretty much every day. And then on days we don't do bath, we just do the diaper change and make sure there's no like huge blisters. We typically don't pop anything. Like we don't lance blisters. We don't drain them unless they're like the size of a nickel. And other than that, they typically just go away on their own. So we don't really have, our wound care routine is very simple. It's very easy. Now, if he's having a bad day or there's like a weeping wound or like a breakout, we'll obviously pay more attention to that. And in those days, we change bandages 2 or 3 times just so I can monitor like if it's draining, how it's looking. But for the most part, it's just like you get him up, you put a little bit of bandages on his hips and you let him go. So for us, it's super easy. And I like I said, we're super blessed because I know some wound care routines can take anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours. And that's like that's just a thing, you know, with the bath time and then having to rewrap everything. It's wild. But for us, it's so simple. It's just, you know, make sure he has something protecting his hips and then he's on his way. So.
How did you learn sort of how to do some of this, Jasmine?
Trial and error for sure. You know, I did have a lot of help from the EB moms that came before us. Like one of my personal favorites, her name's Laura. She's amazing. I can message her literally at any time of night and she's going to message me back. She's amazing. And then Kendra's kind of the same way. And they've given me tips like nobody's business. Like if I have a question, she's like, oh, do this and do this. Like there was an area on Maddox's foot that we were watching maybe 2 weeks ago. It looked like it was getting a little cloudy. And Laura, I messaged her, I think at like midnight. And she was like, oh yeah, do this tomorrow. And so we did it. And then she checked on us and it was amazing. Like, so we just learned really from the people who came before us. Because like I said, there's no specific rule book on what you're going to do. And then we kind of just learned what was best for us and adapted to it. And so for us, like, you know, our routine may not work for someone else. Like it may be a completely different, like, you know, some kids go bandage free where, you know, Max, we couldn't do that right now. He's not ready. So it's really just trial and error. And then like, you have to ask for advice from like people who came before you, because they're going to know, you know, better than we do for sure.
How did you get connected with these mamas?
There's a Facebook group. Of course, there's Facebook group for everything. Thankfully, I couldn't imagine having him before that, for sure. But we connected through them with them through that, and then I also am a little bit closer to these mamas, Laura and Kendra, just because our kids wear the same brand of clothes, so we're all along those same pages as well. It's called Kicky Pants, so we're with a lot of those pages, and so we interact and we understand each other from that. So I just Facebook interactions. Like I think she's in California, and then the other one's in North Carolina, and I'm in Indianapolis. So we just, Facebook connected us all, and I'm so grateful for that.
That's amazing. So it sounds like, we have mamas in our community from all different skin conditions, but you would encourage them to connect with other mamas.
Yeah, you're going to definitely when you're going to feel alone in the beginning, for sure. We felt like the doors were closed. Like I said, we just felt super alone. We didn't know what we were going to do. And then my mom's like, oh, look, I found a group on Facebook. And I'm like, okay, I'll go to it. In the beginning, I wasn't answering phone calls. I wasn't doing text messages. Like my mom was fielding all that information to family and friends for me. So she was, of course, the one that found the group before I did. And then now that we're a part of it, I don't think we'd ever leave it. So look, even if you think there's no way, I would just Google it. Whatever skin condition group your kid has, go ahead and Google it. You're going to find something similar or something that's exactly what you're looking for sure.
That's amazing. I feel like I encounter everyone. I do find sometimes that mamas feel like, well, if I bring him around another kid whose skin is more complex or more difficult, or then they're going to think that they're different. What would you say to a mom that's kind of questioning that?
Right. It's not a competition on who's worse, who's in a worse state, for sure. For me, for Laura and for Kendra, both their boys have the recessive version of EB, which is way more severe than Maddox, but they've never made me feel any different. They always make me feel like my questions and concerns are real problems. It's not a competition. We all want to support each other for sure, within our groups. And so that's important. It's I don't think I'll ever feel bad for bringing Maddox around someone who's like him, because he's only going to learn for them. Their sons are role models to my son at this point, and if they're a little bit different, I think they're all going to kind of be familiar. They're all going to have one mutual thing that goes along with each other. They'll all be related somehow, So for me, it's just not a competition on whose kid is worse. They treat me so well, and they've never made me feel like I was less of an EB parent because my kid's not the same severity. So
I think that's beautiful. And I think you're right that sheltering them and keeping them away from other kids is not the answer.
Oh yeah, for sure not. There's no way, especially when school rolls around, if you do choose to put your kid in school, you don't want them to go and not ever having experience with other kids. You want them to know ahead of time, and so that they, if people ask them, because kids are mean, but they're honest, they're going to ask those questions. So you want to prepare them too. And for us, my son, when he starts school, he'll have a cousin who's in the same grade as him. So I'm at least they'll always be friends together. Even though our nephew doesn't have the skin condition, he still is going to have Maddox's back because he'll know him. Maybe it'll make Max more comfortable in the school setting. So it's super important to us that, we just let him interact with people the way any other person would,
I love that. That's so good. Jasmine, I have loved our conversation. I don't want to keep you too long, but is there anything I didn't ask you or I didn't question that you would like to share?
I covered a lot of things. So I guess my most important thing is if you do see one of these kids, if this is just your first time hearing about skin conditions or seeing about it, don't be afraid to go ask about them, learn. I feel as a special needs parent, it's not only our job to educate our special needs children into this world, but to for other parents to explain to their children that not everyone's going to be the same as them. So, you know, just make it kind of a kinder place. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, we're at the place where it being a little different is okay. So that's
I
great.
love that. And I like how you said to say hi. I think we have a culture that's still struggling with the whole don't stare, don't look.
Right.
And then it ends up being that nobody's making eye contact. Everyone's pretending they don't see somebody. And there's a beautiful middle ground where we can make eye contact and smile at each other.
Right.
And we're missing that.
Right, like pretending that these, like you said, like you were just kind of, if you just kind of ignore everyone, pretending these things don't exist doesn't make it better. You know, you got to acknowledge it eventually. Someone's going to bring it up. So for us, like I said, for me especially, like I'm a little bit more comforting than my husband for sure. You know, he's already an intimidating looking person. Me, I'm like, you know what, like if you have any questions, come say, you're going to offend me more if you pretend like, you know, it's nothing. But if you come over and you act like there's nothing wrong with Maddox and you're talking to him and playing with him, I'm fine with that too, you know, just so, you know, just come say something to us. You don't have to, like, there's no reason to stare for sure.
Yeah, don't avoid looking at somebody, but don't stare.
Right, exactly. There, like you said, that middle ground, it's there somewhere. Just go find it.
Yeah, and it's so much bigger and so much more pleasant in that middle ground.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's so accepting in it, so.
Yeah. Oh, Jasmine, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you shared. And I can't wait to have you as a part of our community and your girls and Maddox. So awesome.
I know it's going to be so fun. I'm so glad to like, I mean, I kind of just stumbled across this on Facebook, of course. So I'm so glad to do like to find these things because the story I read was 2 girls who had EB that you guys had shared. And for me, it's like to show my son, like, you're going to grow up and like these things, people are, it's going to be positive, like, you know. So I love that he has role models, you know, even if they're 15 years, 20 years older than him, that he can still look up and see that they're brave too. You know, they don't have any shame in hiding their skin at all. So that's super important to me. And I'm so happy that I found this page for sure.
Oh, thank you so much, Jasmine.
Yes, of course.